The sign was crooked. That's the first thing people noticed about the wooden stand on Baker Street. The letters were painted in blue, a little wobbly, like someone had tried their very best, but their hands were too small to hold the brush steady. Miracles for $1. Most people walked right past it. Some laughed. Others shook their heads and muttered words like scam or silly or sad. The city was loud that day. Cars honking, people shouting, music blasting from store speakers. Everyone was in a hurry to get somewhere important, but the girl at the stand wasn't in a hurry at all. She sat on a plastic crate behind the wooden counter, wearing a dress that used to be pink but had faded to the color of old roses. Her hair was braided neatly into 2 long rows that hung past her shoulders. Her hands were folded on the counter, small and still, like 2 sleeping birds. Her brown eyes watched the people pass by, searching each face, but she never called out to them. She never begged. She just waited. "Mommy, what's that girl doing?" a little boy asked, tugging his mother's sleeve. "Nothing, sweetie. Keep walking." An old woman stopped for a moment, squinting at the sign. Miracles? For $1? She chuckled and dropped a quarter into the jar on the counter. "Here's some real charity, child. Go buy yourself something to eat." The girl smiled softly. "Thank you, ma'am, but I'm not hungry. I'm selling miracles." The old woman's smile faded. She hurried away, shaking her head. The sun climbed higher. The shadows grew shorter. The jar on the counter had 3 quarters, 2 dimes, and a button that someone thought was a coin. The girl didn't count it. She just kept waiting, watching, hoping. That's when the black car pulled up. It was shiny and expensive, the kind of car that made people turn their heads and whisper. The back door opened, and a man in a wheelchair rolled out onto the sidewalk. He wore a suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. His watch sparkled in the sunlight. His shoes were so shiny you could see your face in them. But his face? His face was twisted into something cold, something mean. 2 men in black suits pushed his wheelchair toward the miracle stand. A crowd started to form. People always gathered when rich people showed up in poor neighborhoods. They wanted to see what would happen. The man in the wheelchair stopped right in front of the girl. He looked at her. Then he looked at the sign. Then he threw his head back and laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the kind of laugh that makes your stomach feel tight. "Miracles for $1? He said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "Miracles for $1. The crowd grew bigger. 20 people, 30, 40. They surrounded the stand like a fence. The girl didn't move. She didn't look scared. She just looked at him with those calm, searching eyes. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. $1. The man leaned forward in his wheelchair. "Do you know who I am, little girl?" "No, sir. I'm Marcus Wellington. I own half the buildings on this street. I have more money than you could count in your whole life." He tapped his wheelchair. "I've been in this chair for 5 years. 5 years. I've been to the best doctors in the world. Tokyo, London, New York. I've spent millions trying to walk again." He paused, letting his words sink into crowd. "And you, a little girl with a crooked sign, think you can sell me a miracle for $1? Some people in the crowd laughed nervously. Others looked uncomfortable. A few looked angry at the man for being so cruel. But the girl didn't flinch. "I didn't say I could make you walk, sir," she said softly. Marcus Wellington's eyes narrowed. "Then what kind of miracle are you selling?" "The kind you need." The crowd went quiet. You could hear a car alarm 3 blocks away. You could hear a baby crying in an apartment window. But on that street corner, everyone held their breath. Marcus Wellington's jaw tightened. "You've got guts, I'll give you that." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. The crowd gasped. "Here's what I'm going to do," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm going to make you famous, little girl. I'm going to write you a check for $1 million. People gasped. Someone dropped their phone. A woman grabbed her friend's arm. Marcus continued, his voice dripping with mockery. $1 million. But there's one tiny condition. He smiled, showing all his teeth. You have to give me my miracle right now. Make me stand up. Make me walk. Do that, and this check is yours." He waved the checkbook in the air like a flag. "But when you can't, and we both know you can't, I want you to close this ridiculous stand. Stop filling people's heads with false hope. Stop pretending magic is real. Deal?" The crowd was silent. Some people looked at the girl with pity. Others looked excited, like they were watching a movie. A few looked sad, knowing what was about to happen. The girl sat very still. Then slowly, carefully, she reached under her counter. Marcus Wellington grinned. "What? You got a magic wand under there?" The crowd laughed. But when the girl's hand came back up, she wasn't holding a wand. She was holding a piece of paper. It was old and wrinkled, folded many times, like someone had opened it and closed it 1,000 nights. The edges were soft from being touched so much. The girl placed it gently on the counter and slid it toward Marcus Wellington. "This is my miracle," she said quietly. Marcus stared at the paper. "What is this? A trick?" "No, sir. It's a prayer. The first one I ever wrote." Something in her voice made the mockery die in Marcus's throat. Something in her eyes made him stop smiling. Slowly, like his hand weighed 100 pounds, he reached out and picked up the paper. He unfolded it, and as he read the words written in a child's careful handwriting, his face changed. The crowd leaned in, trying to see. What did it say? What could possibly be written on that paper? Marcus Wellington's hand started to shake. Marcus Wellington stared at the words on the paper. His lips moved, reading them silently at first. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, he read them out loud. "Please, God, get my mom back. She got sick and left me. I'll do anything. Just let her hug me one more time. I promise to be good. I promise to be brave. I promise not to cry so much. Just one more hug. Please. Love, Amara." The street was so quiet you could hear the paper trembling in Marcus's hands. Someone in the crowd started crying. Marcus looked up at the girl. "At Amara. Your mother?" "She died 2 years ago," Amara said softly. "Cancer. We didn't have money for the treatments. She tried to be strong, but..." Her voice got quieter. "One day she just didn't wake up." A woman in the crowd covered her mouth. A man took off his hat and held it to his chest. Marcus Wellington, the man who owned half the street, the man who had laughed so cruelly just minutes ago, felt something crack inside his chest. It felt like ice breaking. It felt like a door opening in a room that had been locked for years. "Why do you keep this?" he asked, his voice rough. "Because it reminds me," Amara said, "it reminds me that even when God doesn't answer the way you want, you have to keep asking. You have to keep hoping. That's the miracle, not giving up." Marcus felt heat behind his eyes. No, he wouldn't cry. Not here, not in front of all these people. He was Marcus Wellington. He didn't cry, but his throat felt tight. His chest felt heavy. "I had a son," he heard himself say. The crowd leaned in closer. His name was Daniel. Marcus's voice cracked. He was 7 years old. He loved dinosaurs and building blocks, and... He stopped, swallowed hard. 5 years ago, we went to the beach. I was on my phone, always on my phone, making deals, counting money, being important. Amara watched him with those calm, patient eyes. Daniel wanted me to play with him. He kept asking, "Daddy, come swim. Daddy, watch me." But I was too busy. Marcus's hands gripped the armrests of his wheelchair. I told him to wait. Just 5 more minutes. Always 5 more minutes. A tear rolled down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. The wave came so fast. So fast. 1 second he was there, and then... Marcus's voice broke completely. They found him an hour later. My son, my beautiful boy, gone because I couldn't put down my phone for 5 minutes. Women in the crowd were crying now. Men looked at the ground. Even the bodyguards in black suits had tears in their eyes. The accident happened when I dove in after him. Marcus continued. I hit rocks trying to find him. Broke my back. The doctor said I'd never walk again. He looked at Amara. But you know what the real curse is? It's not the wheelchair. It's that I survived and he didn't. Sir, Amara said gently, that wasn't your fault. Yes, IT was. Marcus shouted, startling everyone. Don't you understand? I had everything, money, power, health, and I wasted it. I wasted every precious second. He slammed his fist on the armrest. Now I have nothing. The money means nothing. The buildings mean nothing. My wife left me because I was too broken to fix. My friends disappeared because I was too angry to be around. He pointed at his wheelchair with shaking hands. You want to know why I came here today? You want to know why I mocked you? His voice dropped to a whisper. Because I wanted you to fail. Because if miracles don't exist, then I don't have to feel guilty for not praying anymore. I don't have to feel like God abandoned me, because I know I abandoned him first. The silence that followed was heavy, like a blanket made of sadness. Amara stood up from her plastic crate. She was so small, barely tall enough to see over the counter properly. She walked around to where Marcus sat in his wheelchair, and everyone watched as this tiny girl, in a faded dress, stood before this giant, broken man. Mr. Wellington, she said, can I tell you something? He nodded, unable to speak. When my mama died, I was so angry. I stopped eating. I stopped talking. I stopped everything. She touched the paper, still clutched in his hands. I wrote that prayer, and I put in a bottle and threw in the river, because I didn't think God was listening anymore. But then what changed? Marcus asked. I found it again, Amara said. 3 months later, walking by that same river, that same bottle washed up at my feet. And I realized something. She smiled. It was the saddest, most beautiful smile Marcus had ever seen. God was listening the whole time. He didn't bring my mama back, but he brought the prayer back to me. He was saying, keep asking, keep hoping, keep believing. I'm still here. Marcus felt something break inside him, really break, like chain snapping. But I don't deserve miracles, he whispered. Not after what I did. Not after what I didn't do. Amara reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were small and warm. Mr. Wellington, you came here today for a miracle, right? He nodded. Then here it is. She squeezed his hand gently. The miracle isn't making you walk. The miracle is making you feel again. You've been dead inside for 5 years, haven't you? Marcus couldn't speak. He could only nod. But right now, this second you're feeling something. You're sad. You're angry. You're guilty. You're sorry. Amara's eyes filled with tears too. That means you're alive again. That means your heart still works. That's the miracle. The crowd was completely silent. Even the city seemed to hold its breath. No car horns, no sirens, nothing. I can't bring your son back, Amara said softly. Just like nobody could bring my mama back. But I can tell you what I learned. The people we love don't want us to stop living. They want us to love harder, to hope bigger, to believe stronger. Marcus looked at this little girl, this impossible, amazing little girl, and he saw something he hadn't seen in 5 years. He saw hope. Not hope that he would walk again. Not hope that Daniel would come back. But hope that maybe, just maybe, he could learn to live with the pain instead of dying from it. How much for your miracle? He asked, his voice rough with tears. Amara smiled. $1, sir. Same as everyone else. Marcus reached into his pocket. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold anything. He pulled out a dollar bill, a single wrinkled dollar, and placed it carefully in Amara's jar. The crowd watched as the richest man on the street bought a miracle for $1. And somehow, impossibly, it felt like the best money he had ever spent. But the story wasn't over yet. Not even close. The dollar bill landed in the jar with a soft clink against the quarters and dimes. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The crowd stood frozen, watching Marcus Wellington, the man who had come to mock and destroy, sitting in his wheelchair with tears streaming down his face. Then something unexpected happened. A woman stepped forward from the crowd. She was wearing a nurse's uniform, like she'd just gotten off work. Her eyes were red from crying. She reached into her purse, pulled out a dollar, and placed it in Amara's jar. My daughter won't talk to me anymore, she said quietly. We had a fight 3 years ago, and now I don't know how to fix it. She looked at Amara. Can I have a miracle too? Amara nodded. Write down what you want to say to her. What you really want to say. Then keep it with you. Read it every night. That's your miracle, not giving up on love. The woman's lips trembled. She nodded and stepped back. Then a man came forward. Then another woman. Then a teenager. Then an old man with a cane. One by one, people from the crowd approached the miracle stand. Each person put in $1. Each person whispered their pain, their hope, their desperate wish for something to change. My husband drinks too much. I lost my job, and I don't know how to feed my kids. I'm sick and I'm scared. I feel so alone. Amara listened to every single person. She didn't promise to fix their problems. She didn't claim to have magic powers. Instead, she gave each person the same simple miracle. Permission to keep hoping. Permission to keep trying. Permission to believe that tomorrow might be different than today. Marcus watched all of this from his wheelchair, and with each person who stepped forward, he felt something growing inside his chest. It wasn't physical healing. His legs still didn't work. His back still hurt. But something else was healing. Something deeper, something that had been broken longer than his spine. His heart was remembering how to beat properly again. When the last person stepped away, Amara's jar was overflowing with dollar bills. There must have been $50 in there. Maybe more. To some people, that was nothing. To Amara, it was everything. But she didn't count it. She was looking at Marcus. Mr. Wellington, she said softly, can I ask you something? Anything, he replied. What are you going to do now? It was a simple question, but it felt like the most important question anyone had ever asked him. Marcus looked at his hands. These hands had signed million-dollar deals. These hands had held his son. These hands had pushed away everyone who tried to help him. What would these hands do now? I don't know, he admitted. I've been so angry for so long. I forgot how to be anything else. Amara walked over and stood beside his wheelchair. My mama used to say something before she died. She said, baby girl, when you fall down, you have two choices. You can lie there and let the ground win, or you can decide that today is the day you get back up. But I can't get up, Marcus said, gesturing to his wheelchair. Yes, you can, Amara said firmly. Maybe not with your legs, but with your heart, with your spirit. You can stand up right now, taller than you've ever stood before. Marcus felt those words sink deep into his soul. She was right. He'd been lying down for 5 years, not in a bed, but in his pain. He'd let the ground win. He'd let the guilt crush him. He'd let the anger poison him. But he didn't have to stay down anymore. You know what? Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. You're absolutely right. He looked at the crowd that still surrounded them. I came here today to prove that miracles don't exist. I wanted to embarrass this little girl. I wanted to show everyone that hope is stupid and faith is foolish. He paused, wiping his eyes. But instead, I got exactly what I paid for. I got my miracle. He looked at Amara with so much gratitude it made his chest hurt. This girl taught me that miracles aren't always about getting what you want. Sometimes they're about becoming who you need to be. The crowd erupted in applause. People were crying and clapping and hugging strangers. Even the bodyguards were wiping their eyes. Marcus pulled out his checkbook again. The crowd went quiet. Now, before you worry, he said with a small smile, the first real smile he'd smiled in 5 years, I'm not going to write a check for $1 million. Amara looked relieved. Because that wouldn't be right, Marcus continued. You charged me $1, and that's what I paid. A deal's a deal. He clicked his pen. But what I'm going to do is write a check to build a community center in my son's name. A place where kids can play and laugh and be safe. A place where parents can actually watch their children instead of being on their phones. He scribbled on the check and tore it out. And I'm going to make sure that Amara here has a real stand for her miracles. Not this crooked wooden thing. No offense. None taken. Amara said with giggle. A proper stand. With a roof for when it rains. With a chair that's not a plastic crate. Marcus's eyes sparkled with something that looked suspiciously like joy. Because people need what you're selling, Amara. They need it more than they need anything I've ever sold in my life. The crowd cheered again, louder this time, as the sun began to set over Baker Street, painting the sky in oranges and purples. People slowly started to drift away. They went back to their lives. But they went back different, changed, softer somehow. Marcus stayed until the very end. Amara, he said as she started to pack up her stand, can I ask you one more thing? Sure, Mr. Wellington. Do you really think your mom will be proud of you doing this? Amara looked up at the sky, where the first stars were starting to appear. I think she's watching, and I think she's smiling, because I didn't let the sadness win. I turned it into something beautiful. Marcus nodded slowly. That's what I'm going to do too. For Daniel, I'm going to turn my pain into something beautiful. That's the best miracle of all, Amara said. As Marcus's bodyguards wheeled him toward his car, he turned back one last time. Hey, Amara? Yes. Same time next week? I might need another miracle. Amara grinned. They're always $1. Best dollar I'll ever spend, Marcus said. And he meant it. The black car drove away. But Marcus Wellington wasn't the same man who'd arrived. That man had been dead inside, a ghost in an expensive suit. This man was alive. This man had hope. This man had remembered how to feel. Amara folded up her sign and tucked it under her arm. Her jar of dollar bills jingled as she walked. Tomorrow she'd come back and do it all over again. Sit at her stand, wait patiently, and offer miracles to anyone brave enough to buy one. Because that's what the world needed most. People who refused to stop believing, even when believing was the hardest thing in the world. So what about you? What miracle do you need today? What hope have you given up on? What dream have you buried because it hurt too much to keep believing? Maybe, just maybe, the miracle you're looking for isn't about changing your circumstances. Maybe it's about changing how you see them. Maybe it's about giving yourself permission to keep trying, keep hoping, keep loving, even when it's scary. Because here's the truth. Miracles don't always look like magic. Sometimes they look like a little girl with a crooked sign. Sometimes they look like a broken man who finally lets himself cry. Sometimes they look like you, deciding that today is the day you stop letting the ground win. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that hope is worth fighting for, then share it with someone who needs their own miracle today. Hit that like button if you believe miracles still exist. And subscribe because every single week, we're going to bring you more stories that prove one thing. No matter how dark it gets, the light never stops trying to break through. Drop a comment and tell us, what's your $1 miracle? What would you write on your own piece of paper? Let's build a community of believers right here, right now. Remember, miracles are real. They're just not always what you expect. See you next time. Keep hoping. Keep believing. Keep standing up, no matter how many times you fall. Like, share, subscribe.